Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever noticed how, well, when people talk about UFOs, it's almost always like this totally modern thing?
Yeah, that's definitely the popular idea, isn't it? Like it all kicked off in the 20th century, maybe something to do with Cold War paranoia or secret government stuff.
Exactly. Roswell, Area 51, maybe some grainy photos from the 50s. But what if that whole timeline is just wrong? Completely upside down?
What if people have been seeing weird things in the sky, things they absolutely couldn't explain for basically, well, forever?
That's not just a what if for us today, is it? It's pretty much the whole point of the book we're diving into.
Absolutely. The core idea behind our source material today.
It is. And honestly, it's thrilling. Our deep dive today is based entirely on UFO sightings of ancient history, a collection of UFO reports by Adam Leon. And the really cool thing, the thing that makes this book stand out, is that he only collects accounts from before the 1940s.
Right. He's specifically tackling that skeptic argument head on, the idea that sightings only started after WWII, influenced by sci-fi or early aviation.
Totally. So our mission today, and this might be the most mind-blowing one yet, is to basically time travel through this book. We're going to hit every single case from the excerpts you shared, looking at the author's descriptions, his take on things, and just see what these ancient accounts might tell us about UFOs throughout history.
And we're approaching this totally open-minded, right? Presenting what the author found, what these old texts and reports say. No judgment, just exploration.
Exactly. We're just laying it out there. And the author makes a great point in the preface about the language barrier.
Ah, yeah, that's crucial. Before people had words like rocket or metallic craft, what words did they use?
They used what they knew. Divine terms, supernatural descriptions, maybe familiar objects. So a high-tech ship might become a chariot of fire.
Or burning shield, or even, as we'll see, a flying wine jar. They lack the mechanical vocabulary, so they reach for the supernatural or the mundane to describe the utterly unfamiliar.
Makes perfect sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
If you saw something impossible today, you'd struggle for words too, right? So yeah, if you thought UFOs were just a modern thing, buckle up. This is a trip way back.
A journey suggesting the phenomenon isn't new, just our way of talking about it.
Absolutely. It completely flips the script on the timeline. So get comfortable. This is going to be wild. And hey, if you're finding this as fascinating as we are, do us a solid. Like and subscribe to the deep dive, and definitely hit that notification bell so you don't miss future explorations.
So to kick things off, the author clarifies the term UFO itself, which is important.
Right, because everyone immediately pictures that classic silver disc, the flying saucer.
And yeah, that shape is definitely reported. But the author uses the official, broader definition, unidentified flying object.
Yeah.
Simply any aerial craft you can't identify as human-piloted or within known human tech at the time.
So it's about being unidentified and flying. And the shapes in these old accounts, wow, they're all over the place, aren't they? Not just discs.
Exactly. The author lists descriptions that sound like tic-tacs, cones, rockets, cigars, spheres, even cubes, a whole range.
And the big claim the author explores throughout the book.
The primary theory discussed is that many of these craft seem to be piloted by extraterrestrial or maybe even interdimensional intelligences. That's the lens he often views these accounts through.
And the reasoning behind leaning towards that, pretty huge conclusion.
It really comes down to the flight capabilities described again and again. These things are reported moving through air, water, seemingly even space.
Capabilities suggesting travel over vast distances, surviving vacuum, stuff way beyond ancient tech.
Precisely, which, from the author's viewpoint, points away from human origins, especially back then.
Okay, definition broad, authors leaning towards non-human intelligence based on capabilities.
Got it.
So let's dive into the deep end. The absolute oldest account in these excerpts, Enoch's ascension, takes us way, way back.
Way back. Predating most non-religious historical records. We get brief mentions in Genesis and Hebrews. You know, Enoch walked with God, was translated, didn't die like normal.
Just sort of poof, gone.
That's the gist in the Standard Bible. But the author digs into the non-canonical Book of Enoch, which gives this incredibly detailed, almost first-person narrative. And the author frames it, well, almost like an ancient alien abduction story.
Whoa, okay. Reading an ancient religious text as a potential abduction or space journey, that's a bold interpretation. How does Enoch actually describe it?
In the Ethiopian Book of Enoch, chapter 14, he talks about being called by a cloud, mist, seeing stars and lightning, and then winds literally lifting him into the sky. The author interprets this bit as being enveloped in a tornado of light that carried him upwards.
A tornado of light lifting him up. That's vivid. And once he's up, he's inside this cloud, maybe a craft, with beings he calls watchers. like angels.
Yes, typically interpreted as angels. And these watchers start showing him things. Places and phenomena, the author argues, sound remarkably like descriptions of space travel and cosmic structures, just filtered through ancient language.
Like what? What kind of places?
First, he describes seeing 7 stars, like great burning mountains, appearing to orbit each other, and the place itself terrifying. No sky, no ground, no water, no birds, just desolate. 7 orbiting mountain stars, chapters 18 and 21.
7 burning mountains orbiting each other, thousands of years before we really understood star systems or gravity like that. Wild.
Exactly. Then they take him somewhere else. Somewhere the author compares to a star collapsing into a singularity, what we'd call a black hole.
Hold on, a black hole. In the book of Enoch, how on earth is that described?
Not using that term, obviously, but chapter 21 talks about a place of great fire, a cleft reaching into the abyss, and pillars of fire. The watchers tell him it's the prison of the angels, light particles, and the author's reading held there forever. He sees this as describing light trapped by immense gravity.
That's genuinely staggering. Descriptions that sound like distant star systems, maybe even black holes, millennia before we had the science for it. If you take this as a literal experience, like the author suggests, it blows up our timeline of cosmic awareness.
It really does. And then the sun, this part really highlights the author's point about language. Enoch believed the sun was fixed in the sky, orbiting Earth.
Yeah, the standard geocentric view back then.
But when he gets taken to the sun, he can't even recognize it at first. Chapter 23 says he just sees a large fire burning day and night without rest. Then a watcher explains that fire is the source of all light in the sky.
So he goes from thinking it's a small lamp orbiting us to seeing this immense burning star up close, describing it as just a giant fire. It's a perfect example, maybe, of an incredible technologically advanced experience, space travel, being described using the only words available. Clouds, wind, fire, angels.
It perfectly encapsulates the author's thesis, an amazing experience, possibly involving technology, rendered in the language of religion and nature.
It really forces you to look at these old stories differently.
Okay, let's jump forward, but still, way back. Around 600 BC, another biblical big one, super controversial, the vision of Ezekiel.
Ah, yes, Ezekiel. Probably one of the most discussed passages when it comes to anomalous aerial stuff, just because the descriptions are so, well, strange, almost mechanical, describing what's often taken as God arriving in essentially a flying craft.
How does Ezekiel's vision start?
It's dramatic. He sees a whirlwind coming from the north, a great cloud with fire flashing back and forth and brilliant light all around it. And inside this, he sees the form of 4 living creatures.
Okay, whirlwind, fiery cloud. Sounds like a crazy storm, maybe. But like Enoch, the details get really specific and really weird.
That's it. Inside this intense aerial thing, he sees a gleam like amber. Now, here's where the author brings in that reinterpretation idea. He points to translation disputes, suggesting some versions could be rendered more like glowing metal.
Glowing metal. Okay, that completely shifts the image, doesn't it? From just light to something solid, maybe artificial.
Absolutely.
It reframes it from atmospheric phenomena or pure divine light to potentially something manufactured. The author argues the whole description, whirlwind, smoke, fire, containing these structured creatures matches descriptions of rocket propulsion or gyroscopic UFOs, just using ancient terms.
And the 4 living creatures themselves. The author gets into some really interesting linguistic stuff there.
This is where he dives deep into the original Hebrew. Ezekiel says they had a human form, but with 4 faces and 4 wings each. Straight legs, feet like calf's hooves, gleaming like polished bronze. Human hands under their wings on 4 sides. And crucially, their wings were touching one another. They did not turn as they moved. Each one went straight ahead.
4 faces, 4 wings. Sounds symbolic, right? Angelic. But the language thing.
Yes. The author focuses on 2 Hebrew words, panim and kanaf. Panim, usually faces, can also mean surface or side. Kanaf, usually wings, can also mean corner or edge.
So instead of 4 faces and 4 wings, maybe 4 sides and 4 edges.
Exactly. Which radically changes the picture from, say, a weird angel to something geometric, maybe cubic.
A 4-sided, 4-edged thing made of glowing metal.
Yeah. And the legs. Straight, gleaming bronze, like calf's hooves. The author reads that as metallic pillars ending in circles, maybe split, shining like bronze.
Metallic pillars, not legs. Okay.
And the hands. Under their wings on their 4 sides. The author suggests this means hands sticking out from the edges or corners of this metallic shape. Maybe a small craft, like a cube, wrapped around an entity like a suit with hands on the outside corners.
A glowing metal suit with hands sticking out the corners. That is seriously bizarre. What an image.
And their movement fits this for the author. Their wings were touching interconnected edges maybe, forming one large craft moving together. Each one went straight ahead, without turning suggests a single complex machine, not four separate beings slapping around.
So the author's take, based on the language, isn't just a craft, but maybe a complex, robotic, or technologically augmented metallic vehicle, possibly cubic. Described by a prophet, using the only words he had, human forms, animals, divine stuff, for something totally alien. Wow. It's a completely different way to read Ezekiel.
It's applying that core idea. Look at the old description, think about the language limits, and see if it maps onto something. Well, maybe non-human tech.
It's fascinating how interpretation can unlock these texts. Okay, let's step outside purely religious texts, but stay ancient. Diodorus Siculus Timoleon, 343 BC. Not a prophet. This guy was a respected historian, right?
Yes, a well-regarded historical writer. His stuff is generally taken seriously. He wrote about something that happened during his voyage from Corinth to Sicily.
What did he report?
He described hearing something impossible for 343 BC, a sonic boom, and then bam, illuminated torches suddenly appeared all around him. Lampus, he called them, flying through the night sky, passing over his ship.
Torches in the sky, appearing with a boom. How did he see them? What did he think they were?
This is key. He didn't think they were natural. He described these torches as actively helping him, guiding his ship. And the author stresses this detail. The lights did not fade or dim over time, like a comet or meteor would. They stayed bright, followed him, guided him all the way to Sicily.
Lights appearing with a boom, staying bright and acting like a deliberate guide. That sounds less like a random meteor shower and more like, well, like an escort.
Precisely. And Timoleon's own interpretation. For someone like him, it was huge. He saw it as proof of goddesses, or maybe non-human beings, coming from the lights as messengers from heaven, giving him insight, telling him he'd be famous.
So he read it as divine intervention, supernatural guides helping his journey. And the source quotes both Diodorus and Plutarch about this.
Yes. Diodorus mentions the torch blazing in the sky even before the voyage, and priestesses being told goddesses would go with him. Plutarch describes the heavens seemed to burst open, showing this abundant and conspicuous fire. A torch lifted, darted down towards Italy. Soothsayers apparently saw it as goddesses showing heavenly light.
So, multiple historical accounts of an impossible event, interpreted by the witness as divine guidance. Mainstream history might say, oh, comets, reflections. But the sonic boom, the non-dimming lights, the guidance. Hard to explain naturally, especially when an educated historian chalks it up to non-human intelligence.
It definitely shows that tension between a natural explanation and the very specific, weird details in the account, viewed through the author's lens of potential ancient technology described as divine.
What strikes me is the pattern. Impossible flight, deliberate behavior, even if the descriptions change. Divine messengers, or multiple moons, 122 BC, Ariminum, Italy. This one sounds wild.
Another really strange one, recorded by folks like Pliny the Elder in his Natural History. People in Ariminum reported seeing 3 moons hanging over the city.
3 moons, okay. That would definitely make you stop and stare.
And get this, they stayed fully lit, even during the day, and apparently they were seen over a wide area, not just locals.
Fully lit moons. Visible during the day. Our moon is barely visible then, right? Certainly not looking like 2 extra bright moons.
Right? Pliny recorded it. And it wasn't the only weird sky stuff he noted. He mentioned multiple suns sometimes, night suns making it daylight at night, and get this, a burning shield scattering sparks rushing across the sky at sunset.
A burning shield scattering sparks.
Yeah. And another time, a spark fell from a star, grew big as the moon, gave off cloudy daylight, then shot back up into the sky and turned into a torch.
Burning shield. Spark turning into a torch. The author points out how much that sounds like modern reports of metallic discs or glowing UFOs, right? Language again?
Exactly. A metallic disc could easily be a shield, a glowing object, a torch.
But back to the 3 moons over Ariminum. The standard explanation is usually some kind of atmospheric thing, right? Like a moondog effect, bending light.
That's the common natural explanation. But the author presents a counter based on Pliny's own details that the author says don't quite fit. Pliny apparently reported that the actual stars were still in their normal places, and these other moons were actively covering up stars.
Covering stars. So they weren't just light tricks in the atmosphere. They were solid things, closer than the stars they were blocking.
That's how the author reads Pliny's account. It suggests these weren't just illusions, but physical objects in the sky, closer than the real moon, somehow artificially lit to look bright even in daylight, and doing it without warping the whole atmosphere in the way needed for typical optical effects like moondogs.
3 large, solid-seeming, artificially lit objects hanging in the sky, day and night, blocking stars.
Yeah.
That goes way beyond a simple atmospheric shimmer. Sounds like something genuinely anomalous and physical was up there.
It definitely makes you ask, if it was just normal atmospheric stuff, why the specific details about blocking stars and daytime visibility that don't match typical phenomena?
It's the consistency of the weirdness that gets me. Glowing things moving impossibly, seen by many people. Let's go to 74 BC, the glowing Pithos sighting. Sounds like it interrupted a war.
Oh, it absolutely did. The Roman army was fighting King Mithridates VI in Phrygia, near Otreae. And what makes this one stand out is that both armies saw the same thing at the same time.
Okay, thousands of witnesses then on opposing sides confirming the same event. What happened?
Clear day, no warning. Suddenly, a huge boom across the sky, flash of bright lights. Then this large object appeared, came down, and landed right between the two armies.
It landed right there on the battlefield. What did this thing look like?
It was described as being wrapped in fire, but specifically not normal fire. It was the color of molten metal glowing really brightly, and the shape. They said it looked like a large wine jar, a pithos, a common big storage jar back then.
A glowing, molten metal-colored wine jar on fire, landing between two armies. That's surreal. Again, the language calling some advanced craft maybe a wine jar because of the shape.
Plutarch wrote about it in his Parallel Lives, confirming the details. He said the sky burst asunder, this huge flame-like body fell between the armies, and he specifically noted the shape was most like a wine jar and the color like molten silver.
Molten silver. Yeah, that reinforces the metallic glowing thing.
Yeah.
And the result, when this thing landed,
both armies were just completely stunned, astonished, probably terrified. They immediately pulled back, decided to call it a day and fight later.
a UFO encounter literally stopped a battle in ancient history. That's incredible. Shows just how bizarre and maybe frightening these things seemed.
Yeah.
Clearly way outside anything they understood about war or nature.
Yeah, you can see why ancient people might jump to divine omens to explain something like that.
Okay, let's jump way forward now. 16th century. We got a couple of accounts here that sound, well, like something out of a historical sci-fi movie, starting with Nuremberg, Germany, 1561. This is a really famous one the author includes.
It's truly astonishing. A mass sighting, and Nuremberg was a big, busy city. Plus, it was documented in a broadsheet, basically an early newspaper. Happened April 14th, 1561, super early, like 4 or 5 a.m.
What did all these people in Nuremberg see?
As the sun was rising, they reported it being blocked out by 2 huge, blood-red half circles hovering there. These arcs gave off their own dark, red light. The author wonders if maybe they were like red spotlights or windows on something bigger.
Red spotlights blocking the sun. Weird. What else was up there?
Oh, it was chaos. The account describes tons of other objects, crescent shapes, balls, triangles, cones, all filling the sky around the sun.
A whole fleet of different shapes.
Yeah.
And they weren't just floating there peacefully, right?
Definitely not. This is where it gets wild. The document says they started having fiery battles, objects flying back and forth, fighting vehemently for over an hour. It even says some objects seem to get shot down, falling to the ground in smoke and debris.
Fiery aerial battles between different shaped objects over a major city in 1561. That's just wow. Can you share some specifics from that old news report?
Yeah, the surviving broadsheet talks about the 2 blood-red semicircular arcs near the sun, a dull black iron-colored ball in the sun, and lots of other blood-red balls and shapes around it, some in lines of 3, squares of 4, some alone. It also mentions blood-red crosses and blood-red strips mixed in with large and small rods that had more globes inside them.
Rods with globes inside. Cross shapes. Sounds complex, almost structured.
Yeah, and the description of the action is intense. These all started to fight among themselves. The globes flew back and forth among themselves and fought with each other for over an hour.
And it ended with them getting fatigued and falling down, burning up, wasting away with immense smoke, like they were describing machines fighting and being destroyed.
That's exactly the feel you get, interpreted through their understanding of war and maybe supernatural power. After the main fight, the report also mentioned seeing a black spear, very long and thick, pointing west.
A black spear afterwards, like something lingering. What a complex scene. And tied to this event is that weird recurring thing the author brings up, angel hair.
Yes. After the battle, the document says large amounts of thread-like stuff were found all over the ground below where the objects had been flying. The author points out this perfectly matches what modern UFO researchers call angel hair, and its properties were bizarre. It vanished soon after landing, or if you touched it, became like a gel, then poof, gone like dust.
This weird substance falls after this crazy sky battle, and it just dissolves. A physical trace that conveniently disappears.
Exactly. And predictably, the Nuremberg documents treated it all through the lens of their time, a supernatural religious event, a terrible omen from God.
Makes total sense for them. How else do you explain battling lights and vanishing threads? You look to God, right? What's amazing is the detail, the shapes, the battle, combined with that weird physical residue.
And what makes it even more compelling, the author argues, is that something incredibly similar happened just a few years later nearby.
Basel, Switzerland, 1566. Right, just 5 years later, not far from Nuremberg. Another mass sighting over a city.
Yes, another documented mass sighting, populated area, but this one happened over 3 separate days, which adds a whole other level.
3 days of sky weirdness. Tell us about it.
Okay, so according to the Basel newspaper accounts, Day 1 was July 27th, around 9 p.m. Before sunset, the sun reportedly lost its shine, got dim like the moon. Then this dark red light appeared from it, making the air behind it dark. The author suggests maybe a massive dark craft with red lights was parked in front of the sun, blocking it. It vanished after sunset. Oh, and the moon looked blood red that night, too.
A massive dark thing with red lights, dimming the sun, making it look red, like a deliberate eclipse.
That's one interpretation the author offers. Then the next morning, July 28th, around 6 a.m., the sun rose with that same dark red glow. It supposedly lit up the whole city of Basel in this blood-red, fiery light all day long. Then it disappeared again.
The entire city bathed in this weird blood-red light all day. That had to be seriously unnerving, like a sign of doom or something.
Oh, absolutely. It would cause panic, reinforce any supernatural fears. Then there was a break for almost 2 weeks, but on August 7th, the main event happened.
The big finale, echoing Nuremberg.
Pretty much. The newspaper says hundreds of craft, described as large black spheres, began flying around at tremendous speeds, shooting out what was described as an invisible fire that caused many to burn up and crash into the ground.
Hundreds of black spheres fighting, shooting invisible fire that destroys them. That sounds so much like Nuremberg. But spheres this time, not mixed shapes.
The newspaper, quote, covering all 3 days confirms it. Sun losing light, weeping tears of blood, air dark, sun rising fiery red, and then large black spheres coming and going with great speed, chattered as if they led a fight. Many of them were fiery red and soon crumbled and then extinguished.
Wait, some were fiery red spheres too, not just black.
Yes, the account mentions both black and fiery red spheres, which is interesting for the theories the author discusses about maybe different sides involved.
Okay, let's get into those theories the author mentions for these 16th century sky battles.
So, the author lays out a few possibilities researchers consider. One idea: that first big red light thing before the main battle was actually all the little black spheres working together, maybe doing some experiment like blocking the sun to hurt crops. Another idea: maybe the craft were trying to warn people about the coming battle, using red light as a universal danger signal, like fire or blood.
That communication idea is interesting, and the author notes that red light craft showed up before the Nuremberg battle too, right? Maybe a pattern.
That link between the two big sightings, so close in time and space, does suggest maybe some coordinated activity, perhaps even communication from whoever or whatever was involved.
And the crashing craft in Basel, like in Nuremberg, just burned up into smoke.
Yeah.
The author suggests maybe that's why we don't find advanced wreckage. They self-destructed or got obliterated.
It's a way to potentially explain the lack of physical evidence within the author's framework. And the fact these huge battles happened right over populated cities is noted as significant too.
Why fight directly over cities? Were the cities targets? Or were the people watching important somehow?
The author talks about how the different sizes, colors, black spheres versus red spheres might mean different origins, maybe opposing forces, which leads to the theory of maybe a hostile group attacking cities being fought off by a protective group.
Like a cosmic good versus evil battle playing out overhead.
And the religious interpretations back then fit that, right? People saw crosses, thought God stopped the enemies. Maybe that was them interpreting this protection through their own beliefs.
So 16th century dogfights seen as angels versus demons, maybe. And just like Nuremberg, Basel also had angel hair.
Yep. Witnesses in Basel also reported that thread-like stuff falling during and after the event. They apparently thought it was literally the hair of the angels fighting above. The author even speculates that might be where the actual phrase angel hair comes from.
Angel hair as actual hair from battling angels. It ties the supernatural interpretation right back to the physical weirdness. And the author says there were tons more reports like this across Europe in the 1500s.
Yeah, it seems the 16th century was just buzzing with these dramatic, widespread aerial events, all consistently viewed through the religious lens of the time.
Okay, let's jump way forward again. Late 1800s. A couple of accounts here introduce a different, maybe even creepier vibe. Winged figures. Let's start with the Winged Man of 1880. This wasn't just local gossip. The New York Times reported it.
Yes, September 12, 1880, the NYT reported on a mass sighting over New Jersey. Multiple credible witnesses saw something hovering around 1,000 feet up, and it was definitely shaped like a man.
Shaped like a man. Just floating up there. That's unnerving.
It was described more like a flying contraption. It had a huge set of bat wings that made these dramatic, fluid, almost swimming movements in the air. It reportedly circled over crowds and seemed to follow wind currents, but definitely seemed controlled.
A man with giant bat wings flying 1,000 feet up. Sounds like something out of a horror story. Did witnesses see the face?
Yeah, several described the face. Consistently said it had this odd, cruel, determined look. And the whole figure, wings, body, face was totally black, just dark, matching color, no sign of paint or anything. The original article guessed it was probably an African-American pilot in a black suit with black wings.
So even then, the assumption was human pilot, weird machine, but the author points out the big puzzle.
Right. Despite all the reports, the clear technical achievement flying like that was way beyond 1880 tech. No pilot, no inventor ever stepped up to say, yeah, that was me. It's still a total mystery. And crucially, even today, we don't have flapping wing machines that can fly like that.
That's the kicker, isn't it? Seen, described. But the tech seems impossible even now, let alone back then. And what makes it even stranger is there's another related story from the same year, miles away.
Exactly. Just a couple of months earlier, July 29th, 1880, Louisville, Kentucky, two guys, C.A. Youngman and Bob Flexner, saw a black object hovering. As it got closer, they saw a winged man that appeared to have been surrounded by complex machinery and large flapping wings.
More obvious machinery this time.
Yes, and their description of what the man was doing is key. They said he was frantically manipulating the machinery, making the wings flap. He looked like he was desperately trying to stay afloat, just drifting awkwardly. They watched him struggle for minutes.
That sounds clumsy,
Yeah.
like a rough prototype. Very different from the controlled flight over New Jersey.
Precisely. And the author's theory connects them. Maybe the Louisville sighting, with its amateurish look and frantic actions, was an initial attempt of some emerging ornithopter test flight, an early failed experiment. And maybe the New Jersey sighting was a later, more successful version of the same impossible tech.
So either multiple people inventing impossible flying suits, or maybe one person or group whose clumsy early tests were seen in Kentucky and a later, smoother flight was seen in New Jersey. Still relies on tech that shouldn't exist, though.
It's a hypothesis trying to bridge the biological look with the mechanical, while still highlighting just how weird the technology itself was for the time.
Another 1880 sighting, but this one's astronomical. The gigantic cranes crossing the sun, involving an astronomer.
Yes, an Italian astronomer named Rico at the Palermo Observatory in Sicily. November 30th, 1880, 8 a.m. He's using a special telescope to look at the sun and notices these peculiar black objects that would occasionally obstruct his view.
Objects blocking his view of the sun. First thought, sunspots, atmosphere stuff.
That's what he thought initially, maybe a comet hitting the sun or meteors, but he quickly realized, as he put it, something far more dramatic was occurring.
What did he figure out he was seeing?
His published notes from the time say, I witnessed winged bodies in two long parallel lines slowly traveling, apparently across the disk of the sun. They look like large birds or cranes.
Winged bodies in formation, two parallel lines, slowly crossing the sun's face. That's incredibly specific. And seen through a telescope by a trained astronomer.
Rico apparently couldn't explain it scientifically. The author notes he never mentioned it again publicly after that first report, probably scared of ridicule ruining his career.
Saw something impossible, scientifically inexplicable, and just clammed up. The author describes this as a large, unidentifiable winged object similar in color to a crow.
Yeah, linking it conceptually to that later crow giant sighting. This 1880 account is powerful because it's an astronomer whose job is identifying sky stuff, seeing something large, black, winged, moving in formation across the sun and having zero explanation for it.
It really makes you wonder how many other weird sightings by trained observers just got swept under the rug throughout history because they didn't fit the science of the day.
Yeah, highlights the difficulty, even for experts, and the potential social pressure to ignore things that are truly out there.
Okay, let's talk turn of the 20th century. Mystery airships. The author calls these reports, especially from New Zealand between 1890 and 1909, the first mass UFO sightings reported by UFO researchers in the modern day.
This is a key transition point in the book. The author sees these as the real start of the modern UFO era, happening decades before flying saucers and atomic tech were common knowledge. Because people lacked that modern context, the reports often sounded more, supernatural and paranormal.
So people saw things beating early balloons and planes and defaulted to older explanations.
Exactly. Early on, they described huge cigar-shaped craft doing speeds and maneuvers totally impossible for any airship back then, violating physics, sudden stops, starts, sharp turns, high Gs no human could take.
Massive cigars, impossible moves.
Yeah.
So it's exactly like reports that blew up mid-century, but this is the 1890s, early 1900s.
Yes. Then, the author notes, the sightings seemed to change over time. Later reports often shifted from solid shapes to just fast-moving lights that seemed to have no real physical form that could be seen in great detail.
From solid cigars to just fast lights. Interesting evolution of what was reported.
The author focuses on a huge mass sighting in New Zealand, 1909 Otago region. Hundreds of people reported seeing both the fast ethereal lights and solid, flying saucer-like craft hovering.
Flying saucer shapes. In 1909, that term wasn't even around yet.
The author's using the modern term to describe the shape reported back then, yeah. But according to the book, hundreds of reports flooded in, hitting local and national newspapers describing these solid disc shapes and impossible lights. Some reports apparently even sounded like an alien-like invasion, showing how the lack of a tech explanation pushed people towards the unknown.
Wow. Strongly supports the author's idea. The phenomenon isn't new, just our labels and frameworks changed. People in 1909 saw solid discs doing impossible things, described them best they could, mixing early tech ideas with older supernatural ones.
It really shows that transition period, moving towards mechanical language, but still heavily steeped in older ways of thinking about unexplained sky events.
We've had winged men, winged things crossing the sun. Now the white bird giant of 1905. Back to the flying creature theme.
Yep, this one's from the Silshee, California area, mostly nights, August 2nd to 4th, 1905. Another mass sighting. Lots of people reporting a giant bird-like flying object cruising over town.
A giant bird, like a massive actual bird.
Well, one witness, J.A. Jackson, gave a detailed account. August 4th, 1:30 a.m., saw a tremendous bright light lighting everything up. It seemed attached to what he thought was a 70-foot-long airship that was equipped with large wings.
70 feet long. Huge, with wings attached.
Jackson was quoted directly. The mysterious machine appeared to be propelled by the wings alone and rose and fell as the wings flapped like a gigantic bird.
So he saw it as a machine, an airship, but powered only by flapping wings like a bird.
Yeah.
Again, impossible tech, a 70-foot craft just flapping its way through the air.
Exactly. Sightings stretched from Silshee to nearby Brawley. The author just hammers the point. No known airship with giant flapping bird wings for propulsion has ever existed anywhere.
Another case where a biological description, giant bird, gets applied to a massive structured flying thing doing impossible physics. Adds another layer to that recurring winged idea.
Thanks, you ask again. Are wings just the best word they had for flight systems that weren't propellers or rigid wings? Or is it something else?
And that winged thing keeps popping up. The Gobilly River encounter of 1908 sounds less like a giant object, more like a close encounter with something biological, but impossible.
This comes from V.K. Arsenyev, the famous Russian explorer, July 11th, 1908, near Russia's Gobilly River. He found something weird.
What did he find?
Tracks. Completely unlike any known animal. More like a human footprint, he said, but definitely not that of another man's.
Humanoid, but not human tracks. Okay, creepy start. His dog Alpha was with him.
Yes, and the dog freaked out, became incredibly erratic, hair on end, snarling, barking, foaming at the mouth, just staring into the bushes.
Whoa. A dog reacting like that usually means something seriously scary is nearby. What did Arsenyev see?
He saw an upright, bipedal shape hiding in the nearby brushes. It ran a bit, crashing through stuff, then stopped dead still.
Upright, 2 legs, hiding, then frozen. Like it was watching him, trying not to be seen.
Arsenyev's own words are intense. I saw the mark on the path, similar to a man's footprint. My dog Alpha bristled up, snarled. Then something rushed about nearby. However, it didn't go away, but stopped nearby, standing stock still.
And he threw a stone at it to scare it off.
He did. And then things got really weird. The creature outstretched its large black bat-like wings, flapped them loudly, and ascended into the sky as a large black figure that disappeared into the fog, flying past the adjacent river.
Bat wings. It just sprouted wings and flew off.
Arsenio described it. Then something happened that was quite unexpected. I heard the beating of wings. Something large and dark emerged from the fog and flew over the river. A moment later, it disappeared. My dog, badly frightened, pressed itself to my feet.
An upright bipedal thing with big black bat wings that suddenly flies away. Sounds like the wingman again, but maybe more. Biological.
He later talked to the local Udehimen villagers. They got really animated, told him detailed stories about the man who could fly through the air. Hunters found its tracks often, tracks that would just appear and disappear, like it flew off. They agreed the feet looked like a man's.
So the locals knew about it. Had their own stories. It wasn't just Arsenjev seeing things.
But they also told him they didn't know where it came from, said it hadn't been around the region very long before that. Maybe not native, but something newish that showed up.
That's a really compelling account. Physical evidence, tracks, animal reaction, dog, visual sighting, bipedal shape, impossible departure, wings, flight, and local folklore backing it up. Another strong hit for the wings theme, this time more like a cryptid, but with impossible flight.
Yeah, another piece in that puzzle. Are wings form, function, or something else entirely?
Okay, let's go back to the sky, specifically the moon. The Crow Giant on the Moon, 1912. Brings back Dr. S.B. Harris, the astronomer we mentioned with the 1880 cranes.
Yes, Dr. Harris reported this, published in Popular Astronomy, evening of January 27th, 1912. He's using his telescope, imaging the moon, and notices something odd.
What did he spot through the telescope?
First, just a strange smudge blocking his view of the moon's surface.
A smudge, like dirt on the lens or atmosphere.
His first thought. But he cleaned the lens, refocused. Smudge was still there, but much sharper, clearer.
And what was the sharp smudge?
Harris wrote in his published account, I saw an intensely black object, like a crow, poised upon the moon. I estimated it at 250 miles long by 50 miles wide.
Hold on. Like a crow poised upon the moon.
Yeah.
And the size, 250 miles long by 50 miles wide. That is mind-bogglingly huge, something that big on the moon.
That's the size Dr. Harris estimated. Critics naturally jumped on it. No crows on the moon must be atmospheric refraction observer error.
Understandable reaction to such an insane claim, but the author notes Harris clarified something important.
Yes. Dr. Harris made it clear he wasn't saying it was an actual crow. He described it as a large, unidentifiable winged object that was similar in color to a crow. And he stood by his professional estimate of its truly gigantic size, hundreds of miles long, appearing to be on the moon from his viewpoint.
So not a bird, but a massive black winged object, maybe structured. On the moon, estimated at 250 miles long by a trained astronomer. Man. Another powerful hit for the wing theme, but taking the scale and location to a whole new astronomical level.
It adds another layer. These winged things aren't just in Earth's sky in these accounts.
Let's head down to Mexico. Eagle encounters of 1915. More winged men, but this sounds deeply tied into ancient culture.
Yes, early 1900s, rural Mexico, there was a big spike in stories about winged men, and these stories had a specific, terrifying angle. They kidnapped people.
Kidnapping, like abducting villagers.
That was the report, consistent stories. These winged men lived deep in local caves, snatched lone people walking at night, dragged them into the air back to the caves, and they were never seen again.
That's horrifying. Being carried off by a winged figure into a cave. A real nightmare creature with wings.
What makes this really layered, according to the author, is the link to a super ancient tradition in parts of Mexico. One of the oldest rituals, where people dress as winged birds and reenact flying like gods.
An ancient ritual about flying winged gods. How does the author connect that to the 1900s kidnappings?
That ritual, sometimes called the Voladores ceremony, honors a supernatural race, or being called the Hekal. Ancient Aztec and Mayan people believed in the Hekal thousands of years ago, powerful, often feared beings tied to caves, the underworld, capable of flight.
So ancient myths of a winged race from caves that could fly. Then, centuries later, reports of winged men kidnapping people and taking them to caves, the same kind of location.
The author suggests maybe the winged men kidnapping villagers in the early 1900s were remnants of these ancient Hekal encounters once again being witnessed. Basically, people seeing stuff their ancestors also saw and wove into myths and rituals.
A possible line connecting ancient folklore, maybe based on real encounters back then, to sightings just over 100 years ago. What happened with these reports after 1915?
The author notes the encounters with these cave-dwelling winged men just stopped, completely disappeared shortly after 1915.
They just ceased. Another mystery. Did the phenomenon end? Did the beings move on? Who knows?
Another piece for the winged puzzle, suggesting maybe some sightings connect to entities interacting with humans over huge timescales, becoming part of our mythology.
And angel hair, that weird vanishing thread, shows up again. 1917, Fatima, Portugal. This is hugely famous in Catholic history, right? The miracle of the sun.
It is. October 13th, 1917. Mass sightings of weird craft floating lights midday during a massive religious gathering.
Prompted by those 3 shepherd kids who claimed visions of the Virgin Mary and saw strange lights?
Yes. They've been talking about it for months, invited everyone, believers, skeptics, saying Mary would appear that day and make the sun do something miraculous to prove it all. Caused huge buzz, lots of opposition too, threats against the kids even.
High stakes, and thousands showed up faithful, curious, total skeptics. What did this huge crowd see?
According to thousands of separate accounts gathered by researchers like John DeMarchi, something absolutely bizarre happened. They described intense solar activity. The sun seemed to dance and zigzag through the sky, got bigger, smaller, threw off intense multicolored lights, bathing everyone in shifting colors.
The sun zigzagging, changing size, throwing colors, that completely breaks all known rules of astronomy and weather.
Reportedly lasted about 10 minutes. Then the sun went back to normal. Researcher DeMarchi, initially skeptical, collected so many consistent reports from all kinds of witnesses, believers, atheists, scientists, reporters. He concluded it was impossible to deny something truly strange had occurred.
And linked to this impossible sun event.
Yes. During and right after, large amounts of thread-like material fell from the sky all over the place, material fitting the angel hair description. And just like Nuremberg and Basel centuries before, this stuff disappeared soon after landing. Crumbled to dust, dissipated if touched.
So angel hair again. That weird vanishing residue linked to another powerful, inexplicable aerial event, this time interpreted religiously as a divine miracle with the sun.
The Catholic Church recognizes it as a miracle, yes, but the author includes it here, highlighting the UFO-like characteristics. Unidentified aerial phenomena, impossible movement, zigzagging, weird lights, and that recurring angel hair mystery.
A potent example of an extraordinary event interpreted through the dominant cultural lens, religion, yet containing elements, weird movement, strange residue, that echo across centuries of unexplained reports.
And the angel hair link, across centuries, continents, tied to these bizarre aerial displays. It's a consistent, baffling pattern the author keeps highlighting.
Okay, our final case from these excerpts takes us back, maybe to cryptids, but again with wings. The winged hole of Indonesia, 1925.
This is about a creature supposedly living in the dense jungles of Java and Indonesia called the windahul. One cryptozoology theory is maybe it's just a really big, undiscovered bat species.
Is there a specific historical report in the book?
Yes. The author notes the first reported encounter by a Westerner. Dr. Ernest Bartels, a Dutch zoologist, back in 1925. He was studying life on the Salak Mountains in Java.
What did Dr. Bartels see?
He witnessed a massive bat-like creature fly overhead. His description was pretty specific for a quick look. Estimated wingspan, 28 feet tip to tip, and it had the face of a chimp.
28-foot wingspan. And a chimp face. That's not a normal bat description. That's huge and very unsettling.
Modern reports continue locally, stories of it attacking camps, hikers. Scientists think maybe it's possible there are large bats nearby, though nothing near 28 feet.
So this one could be a cryptid, a big unknown animal. But if those details are right, it's enormous and weird looking.
That's the point. While often called a cryptid, the author includes it as another sighting of a massive winged non-human thing reported before 1940, still unexplained, falling outside normal biology if the description is literal. It just adds to that recurring winged theme we've tracked from ancient times right up to the early 20th century.
Man, it really makes you wonder about that winged pattern. Flying creatures, winged men, things described like birds. Are these all just different cultural ways of describing the same thing? Maybe advanced craft seen as birds because that's the closest word. Or is it something else entirely biological things, interdimensional beings manifesting with wings?
It hits that fundamental question, doesn't it? Is the phenomenon purely tech, seen through different filters? Or is it more diverse, different kinds of non-human things, some of which happen to be described as winged?
Wow. Okay. We have gone through every single case in these excerpts from Adam Leon's book, from potential ancient space travel in the Bible to glowing jars stopping battles, fleets fighting over 16th century cities, guiding lights, impossible moons, that weird vanishing angel hair. Tons of reports of winged men and giant winged creatures, even huge structures on the moon, all documented before 1940, before the modern UFO craze.
What's incredible is the sheer range, but also the consistent strangeness, spanning millennia, different cultures, yet always describing things that just didn't fit the science or known world of their time.
And the author's main argument really pulls it together. The phenomenon isn't new, just our understanding and language have changed. Supernatural omens, divine messengers, angelic battles in old texts, evolving into mechanical airships, test flights, cryptids, maybe alien craft later on.
We see those recurring bits, metallic things, strange lights, impossible speed and movement, and that baffling angel hair popping up again and again, linked to these crazy aerial events across history.
And that really strong, persistent winged theme. Winged man, cranes over the sun, white bird giant, Gobilly River creature, crow giant on the moon, eagle, a hool. Are they all just different descriptions of the same thing, craft seen as birds or men with wings? Or is there genuinely something else, a biological maybe, or interdimensional, that has wings or looks like it does? Could the winged humanoid sightings have been the same creature that would later become known as the Mothman?
The different interpretations within the historical sources themselves are fascinating too. Omens, miracles, goddesses helping out, alien wars, test flights, cryptids, ancient races like the Haikal. People just grabbed whatever framework they had, divine, folkloric, to try and make sense of the totally inexplicable things they saw.
And the key for us here was just presenting those views, those accounts, as the author collected them, letting you, the listener, consider it all without us judging. We're not saying it's definitely aliens or definitely not. We're just opening the book and saying, look what people have reported for centuries. Look how this author connects it.
It really does challenge that idea that weird stuff in the sky is just a modern invention. It invites us to think maybe humanity's been looking up and seeing the unidentified for a very, very long time, interpreting it through whatever lens we had available.
It leaves you with a ton to chew on. We covered everything from possible ancient astronauts in the Bible to sky battles over Europe, giant flying creatures, moon anomalies, weird residue, all before 1940.
The sheer variety, glowing jars, multiple moons, battling spheres, flying men, it's astonishing. It points to this continuity of something inexplicable happening in our skies throughout history.
So what does it all mean? If these accounts collected by this author are descriptions of real, unexplained events, tech, biology, something else, what does that say about our place? Not just on Earth, but under these vast unknown skies we've always lived beneath. Does hearing these ancient stories change how you view modern sightings?
It raises that big, maybe uncomfortable question about how long this has been going on, what it really is, and how our own perceptions shape what we think we see.
Definitely a lot to ponder. Thank you so much for joining us on this truly deep dive into the ancient and historical side of UFO reports, based on Adam Leon's fascinating book. We covered a lot of ground and a lot of sky across thousands of years.
It's a collection that really shakes up the conventional timeline for this whole phenomenon.
It absolutely does. We hope you found this journey as thrilling, as thought-provoking, and, yeah, maybe as mind-blowing as we did.